So I've been a lot busier than I thought I would be, so I don't think I can actually get into the books that I read over the last few months. Needless to say, I learned a lot, and I'll have to just make some time in the future. Soon I'm going to be going on another trip, so I'm quite busy recently. So I thought I'd just make this video instead, which is the one that some people have actually requested for, which is my how I was doing in Japan. I was in Japan for 2.5 months, and I was there mostly coincidentally. My mother found like a very cheap ticket to go to Japan, and it was my first time there, and we were originally supposed to just be in Osaka for 5 days, but I thought, what if I stay longer? I've loved Japan. I've wanted to see Japan. And I think my family thought that when I said I'd stay longer, it would be another week or so. And I didn't know how long I was staying either, but I ended up staying for another 2 months. It was a really amazing experience, and it was not something I went into trying to in some way find myself or change my life in any way. Was always going into it with the perspective that I wanted to see how it's like. I want to see what Japan is like, and that was the baseline of my expectations for what I was doing. I am someone who's always been very fascinated with Japanese culture. I've read Japanese literature. A lot of it I've talked on the channel. I've listened to Japanese music. I liked reading about Japanese history. I love Japanese films, so I thought it would be nice to kind of just see what it's like. And so I was there for 2.5 months. I used to I say this through couchsurfing and hostels. Couchsurfing is a website that has hosts on it that allow strangers to sleep in their homes for free. So I used that a couple 5 times in total, and then for a 2 week period, I lived in a temple, a Buddhist temple, a Jodoshu temple, through a website called Workaway, and that is something I found through sending many emails to many different possible occupational things I could do. So Workaway is something you work 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and you get free housing, and sometimes even free food. I was lucky I had free food in my stay. I only did that one time, and it was for 2 weeks in an hour south of Nagoya. It was a Jodo Shu temple, and I sent to many of them, and the possible jobs you could take ranges from apple picking to babysitting to hostels to English language cafes, stuff like that. And I just happened to only be accepted in this Buddhist temple. I think it's because I didn't have any references to my name. I had no experience working somewhere else, and I name dropped Keiji Nishitani, who I talked about on this channel before, and the other Chan Buddhism book I read. So I had some interest in Buddhism, I guess, and that is why they kind of allowed me to come and visit and live there for that amount of time. I stayed there for 15 days, and apart from couchsurfing, hostels, temple, and then I have an old teacher from high school who was the only person I knew who lived in Japan. So he let me stay with him where he lives in Matsue, which is at the very upper left corner of Japan. That's where I stayed for maybe like 6 days. So overall in my trip, if I say my trip was around 70 days in Japan, for around 40 something days it was free housing. So that was really great, because if you're not very familiar with Japanese, Japan's position in Asia, it is usually known as the most expensive part of Asia, or at least one of the most expensive places to live in or to travel to. And so given that it was my first time there, and I just wanted to be able to do as much as I could, or at least just be there for as long as a period as I could without spending too much money, I tried to resort to these methods of living, which I had never really done before, because I do not it was my first time properly traveling alone somewhere where I didn't know anyone, or really just traveling alone somewhere in that kind of method. It was, I guess it was quite daunting at times, and a lot of it required uh, giving oneself up to a trust in how the society functions, in a way that you are able to have faith in the people around you, that they will not harm you, I guess, or not have ill will for you. And I think, while you can even argue that's probably an easier thing to do in Japan, in any situation, it's not that fun. It's not that kind of comfortable to do, I guess. So For example, with the couch surfing, I would have to live in the stranger's home, someone who I'd never met before, who I'd had maybe 2, 3 emails of contact with, and in my head, I'd always be thinking, well, what does this person want from me? Why would anyone let any stranger stay in their home where all their valuables are, where everything, they live there, and sometimes they even give me a key to their home. There's a lot of trust involved in both ways, and it kind of instilled a sense of, I guess a bit more faith in the world, I guess. But when I came into this trip, it was never something that I wanted to have change in my life, or not something I wanted to. Again, like I said, all I really wanted to do was see Japan. And so I traveled all over. I spent a lot of time in Tokyo, in the Tokyo area, living with couch surfing and with the hostels. And after that, I spent a good amount of time in Kansai, Osaka, Kyoto, Nara, Himeji, Kobe, and then at some point I got one of these JR passes, which is such a weird kind of pass because it's just only available to foreigners who are traveling there, not anyone who's working there. No one from Japan can have this pass, but then this pass allows you to have free Shinkansen rides or bullet train rides, and that is the most expensive form of travel in Japan. It's ridiculously expensive, and when you realize, and it sounds like a lot of money when you first pay for it, but when you realize just how much of a convenience it is, and just how much you save from it, like, just to put all the numbers out, like it was a $500 train pass. It was a $500 pass that you just have to you have to have shipped to you. You get shipped to a foreign country. You're going to get like a piece of paper that you bring the paper in one of these Japanese train stations and you exchange it for the pass. And if it was like $500, and when I totaled how much I was spending for the specific each train ride I was spending, it was Shinkansen and also some local train lines, and I reached the amount of money I used to pay for the pass within the first week, or first maybe 9-10 days. So that latter, it was a 21-day pass. So, it was just so worth it. And it's kind of a little too worth it because, again, it's something that's so. Whenever I'd bring it up to a Japanese person, they'd feel so. You can sense a sense of like jealousy because it's a weird thing. Some people don't even realize it's there, but it's only for tourists. And so I did that. I can talk about this for a long time. So I guess that was just the more general notion of what I did. I took a 21-day train pass. I went up to Aomori, which is the upper right corner of Japan, at the furthest point before you end up in Sapporo, which is the island in the north of Japan, where you find, that's a mistake, Hokkaido, which is the island north of Japan. Sapporo is like one of the cities there where you get the Sapporo beer. And then there are many cool areas there which I was not able to explore, but I went from Aomori City, and I made my way down towards Tokyo. I went to all these different cities in between. So Aomori, maybe, I don't know how long it took me to get back down to the Tokyo area. So I went to so let's see. From my 21-day train pass, for example, I went to Aomori City, and then I spent some time that kind of north area, the northwest, and I went down to Sendai, where I went to Yamadera, and I went to GBK, and I did many things around that area. I went down to Yokohama. I went to Kamakura, where my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies, Late Spring is set, and I just went around there. I went to Hakone. I went to Nagoya, Takayama, Shirakawa-go, Kanazawa. Went back to Kansai. Went to Nishinomiya. Stayed there for a few days, going to Kyoto in the mornings, and I went to Himeji Castle, and then I went down to Hiroshima at the end of my train pass to meet up with my old teacher, where from there went to Miyajima, and he showed me around before we went up to Matsue, and we went around that area as well before I ended up flying out at Fukuoka. That's a long thing, and that probably doesn't mean anything to you if you don't know anything about Japanese geography, but it was quite an adventure, and I guess that's just a more general sense of my trajectory of what I was doing when I was there.